close to 1.5 million Palestinians are sheltering in Rafah, where an Israeli ground offensive is threatened. Here's what a few of them are expecting.
The
numbers of dead and wounded people here will be huge if Israel storms Rafah. Personally, I will never leave Rafah. I will stay in Rafah. I'm ready this time to die in Rafah. We urge all the Arab countries, particularly Egypt, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, to take action and adopted a decision to help the Palestinian people and to save the Palestinians from the genocide being committed by Netanyahu.
We live together with the shelling, destruction, relocation, fear and hunger. Despite everything, we will stay strong and resilient. There is news that Israel is pressuring Hamas to accept certain demands, otherwise Israel will storm Rafah. This will result in a massive catastrophe. We have spent more than 100 days here. There are more than 1 million displaced people of different genders, ages, sicknesses and diseases. We will remain an eternal memory of human history for everyone who cares to remember.
We kept moving from one place to another about 7 times. We've lost everything. There is nothing left they can threaten us with. From now on, we have no place to go but the grave. I want the Arab countries to be united and unified. I know America is comprehensively supporting Israel, but I want Americans to help us get back our land and our houses.
The Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh has warned that any Israeli offensive there would mark a new phase in the Gaza genocide.
The killing machine of Israel is still killing our sons in Gaza Strip. This dawn, a new escalation has been announced by the Israeli Prime Minister toward storming Rafah, the last resorting square in Rafah. 100 martyrs have gone, most of them are women and children. In Rafah, there are 1.4 million people living in difficult circumstances, freezing weather, epidemics, hunger, and Israel continues the genocide started in Gaza.
And words of concern from the European Union's top diplomat as well. Josep Borrell says Israel should be pressed not to go ahead with its offensive on Rafah.
Even the US, who is the strongest supporter of Israel, considered by the President Biden himself that this action is disproportionate, that the toll of people being killed, civilians being killed, is unbearable, and warning Israel not to continue this way. But my question is, apart from words, what else do you think it has to be done?
And Britain's Foreign Secretary is also calling for Israel to, in his words, stop and think before raiding Rafah. David Cameron says Gaza needs a sustainable ceasefire.
We are very concerned about what is happening in Rafah because, let's be clear, the people there, many of them have moved 4, 5, 6 times before getting there. And it really, we think, is impossible to see how you can fight a war amongst these people. There's nowhere for them to go. They can't go south into Egypt. They can't go north and back to their homes because many have been destroyed. So we are very concerned about the situation, and we want Israel to stop and think very seriously before it takes any further action. But above all, what we want is an immediate pause in the fighting, and we want that pause to lead to a ceasefire, a sustainable ceasefire without a return to further fighting.
Well, let's take a much closer look at all of these responses with Yanis Varoufakis, who's an economist and Greece's former finance minister. He joins us from Athens. A warm welcome to you. So when it comes to Israel's war on Gaza and the subsequent humanitarian catastrophe, you once said that we Europeans have created this. What did you mean by that?
Europeans have been responsible for centuries of anti-Semitism, of one pogrom after the next until we reached the Holocaust. And since then, this collective guilt has weaponized a policy of white settlement and supremacism in Palestine. Essentially, what we have been doing is using the collective guilt over the treatment of Jews and over the Holocaust in order to justify the Zionist genocide of Palestinians. Because let's face it, what was this Zionist project all about? It was about exporting Jews from Europe to a land that didn't belong to the Europeans, that the Europeans allocated to the Jews to go to. That is a collective project, a European project. It began with the Balfour Declaration, but after 1945, it gave rise to the Nakba. Zionism had a very clear rationale, a land without a people for a people without a land. In a sense, it was a racist ideology, just like the British who went to Australia, proclaiming Australia to be terra nullius, an empty land, a land without the people.
Right.
Zionism, together with European forces, have proclaimed Palestine to be a place without humans. So essentially, the dehumanization of
if Europe, as you say, is collectively responsible for creating the problem in the first place, obviously, then the solution must be in the hands of Western powers also. What is the collective responsibility now on them?
Well, exactly as you put it. We Europeans created the problem, and at the moment, we are playing a vicious role in its perpetuation. I just heard on your program, Mr. Borrell, hypocritically lamenting the fact that not enough pressure is being applied on Israel to stop the genocide in Rafah. Mr. Borrell, you are representing the European Union, which collectively is arming Israel, Germany, France, Italy, as we speak, are sending the very armaments that are being used in Rafah to kill people. We heard Mr. Cameron, the British Foreign Secretary, lamenting again what is happening in Rafah. He has been instrumental in steadying the hand of the IDF in its pursuit of genocide for weeks now by doing whatever he can in order to prevent a ceasefire from taking place. So Europeans have created the problem, Europeans are perpetuating the problem, and Europeans are failing to do that which is necessary in order to do what we claim we are interested in doing, because the official version, the official theory, the official policy is a two-state solution. And yet, Europeans are completely complicit in the support of an Israeli government under Mr. Netanyahu, whose life's work has been the destruction of any prospect of a Palestinian state.
So Europe is, as you say, complicit in what we are seeing there. I wonder to what extent the legal, political, the global institutions, the European Union, as you mentioned there, these institutions that have underpinned the world order since the Second World War, what is happening to their authority? We know that the UN's authority is being repeatedly ignored, and even recent rulings of the ICJ calling on Israel to end acts of plausible genocide are being played down by the US, UK and others.
I have to be honest with you. I believe that Europe's moral authority and geopolitical authority at a global level is a spent force. We have jettisoned it some time ago. If you think back to the time when, Jacques Chirac, the right-wing president of France, visited the occupied territories a long, long time ago, even though he was a friend of Israel, even though he was a Zionist, he had the guts during that visit to confront the IDF, the occupying forces, and in the occupied territories to proclaim the importance of ending the occupation, what we call today apartheid. Today, there is no such French president. There is no Willy Brandt, a chancellor of Germany, that had moral authority back in the late 60s, early 1970s. Steadily, Europe's moral soft power has been depleted with every occasion when Europeans are turning a blind eye to the very concept of universal human rights that sprang out of the European Enlightenment. With every nod to Washington, that essentially whatever Washington decides regarding,
Right.
for instance, Ukraine, Europe will go along with it.
Right.
The capital stock
Mr.
of moral
Varoufakis,
authority
Mr.
that Europe
Varoufakis,
has
I'm afraid
immediately-
we're up against the clock in speaking to you, but let me press you on the point of moral authority, because you personally have courted controversy by not rushing to condemn Hamas's assault on Israel on October the 7th. Why did you make that decision?
Let me start by saying I condemn every atrocity against civilians, or every atrocity overall. However, what I refused to do was to condemn Hamas in the same way that I would never condemn the symptom of a phenomenon, but I will go straight to the main cause of it. In the same way that I would never, for instance, back in the 1970s, condemn the IRA for the colonialism exhibited by the British governments of many, many decades. And remember that in the end, there would have been no peace and no justice in Northern Ireland if the IRA was not involved in the peace process. In exactly the same way, to use the events of the 7th of October to condemn Hamas would be to jeopardize any prospect for peace and universal human rights from the river to the sea in Palestine.
Yanis Varoufakis, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.